Assalamu alaikum. Okay, I'm sorry. I did not mean to intrude. Okay. The philosophy is the core of sciences, and out of philosophy, I have this paper written here. Okay. And out of philosophy, Assalamu alaikum. You want to come sit here? Okay.
She's so low control.
You want to see this? Tablet. I know this is too early. Your father would hate me if you got used to this. See?
No, she's agreeing with you.
But I have a boy, so he plays with cars. You might not like it. You will like it? They didn't mean to, I'm sorry. Here you go. You press like this to play. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. See here, the car, it's moving. So philosophy is the core of sciences. And back then, they used to have philosophy as different branches. And they would begin philosophy with logic, and logic is one of the most important tools in learning. Now they would talk about critical thinking instead of logic. Okay? And then, after that, you would find in philosophy, you find al-ilm al-tabi'i. So basically it's what is called natural philosophy. And then, okay, actually it's, so logic, and then we talk about natural philosophy. And then after natural philosophy, we talk about metaphysics. And in the beginning of metaphysics, or ontology, and then metaphysics. Anyways, philosophy in general, because I don't want to make this like a lesson on philosophy. Philosophy is the core. Logic is the tool for sciences. The logic is actually the skeleton of not the skeleton, but you can say it's the tool that is molded. See, every single discipline has its ways, has its tools of problem solving, of connecting ideas, of answering questions, of developing questions, and so forth. Logic is the way. See, the scholars that talked about Nahw or Arabic grammar, what did they do? They noted that the mind has the Arabs talk in a certain way, right? So what they started to do is to gather that physical phenomenon, that reality, and create abstractions and rules and organizations and so forth. So Arabs used to talk Arabic before Arab scholars or scholars of Arabic grammar were created or came to life. Before then, there was Arabic as a language. But then Arabic as a language became Arabic as a science when human beings started to think about what's happening in reality, and they wanted to create out of the physical reality phenomena, they wanted to write it down as an abstract concepts and rules. Same thing logicians did, scholars of logic. What did they do? They noted that there are rational beings and irrational humans. Humans who are able to think correctly and humans who are not thinking correctly. So what did they do? That's a phenomenon called thinking, called rationalizing. Let's create concepts and ideas about how does that happen, and they created logic. But once again, you can take Arabic grammar and use it in any text you want to write, or poetry, anything, any kind of language, whether written or spoken, whether it's a book or a manual, whether it's a story or something scientific. You use the language. Same thing, you have the art of logic. You use it in medicine, use it in engineering, use it in political science, you mold it. You use the patterns of rational thinking according to the discipline, according to the subject, which is مبدأ الموضوع, the principle of the subject. So the rational thinking gets molded according to the field. So you find out of rational thinking, the thinking of engineers, the thinking of doctors, the thinking of economists, and so forth. All of this is rational thinking. It's coming from what? From the practical application of logic according to the necessities and the dimensions and the realm of that subject or that discipline. So logic is one. The modern day, application of logic could be critical thinking. Could be. Another is philosophy, because out of everything branched. But if we're talking about modern day, I would say some kind of medicine, math, language, and if you want to take out medicine, then it would be math and language and logic with them. Yes, logic, a language, regardless of the language, logic, language, and math, and some kind of life skills, character development. These are the core things. And you would find that the Greek philosophers had these approaches. So you find, for example, Plato, I believe, he used to say, no one would enter our academy unless they learn handasa, geometry. And you would find others would say the beginning of the study is ethics, which you can say character development, or spirituality, or adab, etiquette. You would find Aristotle would start with logic. So now you have math, you have logic, you have ethics. And language is what facilitates the understanding of things, whether the understanding or writing. Because also, if you cannot see, there is a movement of attraction between حركة شوقية, between the ability to say something or to articulate something in a verbal way, to verbalize ideas, and the ability to understand the ideas. And it's like the chicken and the egg. If I'm able to verbalize well, the more I'm able to verbalize, the more I'm able to think. Or is it the more I'm able to think, I'm able to verbalize? And it goes back and forth, on and on and on. In both cases, the ability to verbalize things or to put what you think about in words is important for you to understand, whether what you're explaining or what you're trying to grasp in the future. You understand?
Yeah, I'm studying a subject which is called the integration of sciences.
Okay.
Like we get some topics and we have to see how they integrate it together, like how they for instance, like the food, we see how has it worked with the
I'll tell you another example, but I understand. So what do you take this at the university?
Yeah.
Called integration of sciences?
Yeah.
That's part of which department or which faculty?
English department.
So you take an integration of sciences.
Yeah, because we are in the faculty of education, so we're
okay. Okay, very interesting. Yeah. See, because I just today or yesterday, I had an idea. See, we're providing an online course, and this is the time. We're providing an online course called تعلم كيف تتعلم, learn how to learn, but it's in Arabic, and it's provided on Rawaq. If you go to Rawaq, You go in for a
And
walk.
there is an application for the walk.
Yeah, and there's an application for a walk. rwaq.org/courses/learning. Yes. You want to come up here again? Okay. Yes, but would not be models for advertisements. This is educational purposes, so it's okay. All right? Okay, so rawaq.org/courses/learning. Okay? And Zainab is promoting this course. Yeah? You're promoting the course? Okay. So this course is provided by myself and SYS. Oh, this is their names. Okay. By SYS and myself, the Spread Your Skills, the student activity. The student activity at Al-Azhar University. So check that out, check the course. Okay. And I hope you enjoy it. In that course, I try to explain the notion of the 10 principles, or the 10 introductory principles of any discipline, which is called al-Mabadi al-Ashr. Okay? So these 10 principles, yeah, Mabadi al-Ashr, yes. So we explain this 10 principles through the idea of an octopus. Okay, an octopus has 8 arms and 2 eyes. So these are 10 things. And the idea of al-Mabadi al-Ashr was originally a Greek idea. There were 10 principles called al-Ru'us al-Thamaniya. And it's okay. And then they became 10 in the Muslim tradition. And we explain those using what we call the Tabuta Malaka, or the Malaka, the octopus. So you explain them using that. It's a metaphor, it's an example, it's an illustration, a clip art that we use to explain this. So I had an idea yesterday that came to my mind about this idea of integration of sciences. And it's called the science blender. And the last week, Mustafa and I. Okay. We heard you. Okay. Last week, Mustafa and I wanted to drink juice. So I came up with an idea. I wanted to drink watermelon. And then I said, you know what? Let's try watermelon with pineapple. And it worked. So the idea of, it was good. So the idea of the science blender is what? If we put engineering with sociology, what do we get? If we put engineering with psychology, what would happen? If we put medicine with psychology, we got clinical psychology, for example. If we put medicine with engineering, what happens? We get machines and technologies that are used in diagnosis and that are used also in surgeries, right? Engineering and medicine.
Yeah.
If we put chemistry with medicine, what happens? If we put, any kind of discipline with something else, what do we get out of it? Okay. If we put physics with economics, econophysics, for example. So these are different disciplines, and the idea of the science blender is for the student to think out of a given list of sciences. If you put this to that and look up what will happen. Look it up on Google or something. Search this plus that. What kind of disciplines that are related? And I think actually on your free time, if you do that, this is a practical exercise of integration of sciences. You will learn about connections and chunking between the holistic frameworks between sciences together. Okay. So I guess this is there any other questions? Because we need to say a prayer or something after we finish. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, it's something like you said, like mind is the way, like the understanding or the working
mind is al-aql.
Yeah, like
Okay.
the working of the brain.
And the brain is al-mukh. So al-mukh is physical. And the mind, al-aql, is not physical.
Okay, so mind is enhances us to think or understand things around us, right?
You do this, you understand through your mind, or your mind understands through the brain. The understanding is in the mind, using the brain.
Yeah. Okay, so like, yeah, I would say the verse in Arabic, or
Okay.
that the sentence in Arabic, like, ربنا ميزنا بالعقل عن باقي عن باقي.
Okay, so
right?
al-aql is the mind.
Yeah. So for animals.
Animals have brains.
Yeah, but they don't have minds.
Exactly.
Okay. So like, since you tell the cat, for instance, like sit down or stand up or walk and come, they just act out. So they understand what you're talking about.
Exactly, but they would not, for example, they would not develop what they understood from you to do a play, and then after, because you said sit down and walk, and so they would, out of this, separate directions. They would not design a whole dancing move and a style of dancing, and then you'd find cats writing and talking about the importance of dancing and how dancing can be enhanced within the next generations of cats and how they can teach. Now you understand that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, of course, they have kind of awareness. They do have, but it's not the human mind. You understand? So they do have a kind of thinking, but it's not. It's limited. It's not. They're not equipped with the same abilities. And actually, when we talk about rational thinking, yes, the human mind is distinct from other minds in the ability to draw abstractions using synthesis and analysis. There is another issue that the human mind or the human existence is different than animal existence, is that our mind has a sense of right and wrong. But I did not mention this when we talk about learning. One reason, because we're talking about learning. And the other reason is, you have different explanations of the phenomena of ethics or morals between humans. But the rational thinking is much more clear and direct.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Yes.
I have some questions.
Okay.
Okay, the first one, if there is some memories are designed to learn a specific thing, and also is there
Some memories or some ways, you mean?
memories? Yeah.
What do you mean?
There is some memories first, the design or the way that they accept things and think about it.
Like the memory has
Accept
to categorize things.
Yeah. Either some memories are designed or used to understand or accept some specific signs, and or is there any signs or specific signs had to be learned? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah. What I mean from all this, the first thing, do memories need specific minds in a specific way to learn a specific science? And does the science depend on the memory?
Or the application.
Or the person that is using it,
Okay,
who
good
is
question.
trying to learn this science.
Okay.
And why do we learn specific sciences rather better than other sciences?
Okay. 3 brilliant questions. The answer of the first question, are there certain memories or memory techniques for different sciences? Well, we have talked, right? That will be a clear understanding of your first question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, different. See, every science or every field or every subject is composed or constituted out of different types of information. And of course, that addresses different kinds of multisensory relations. Like, for example, when you talk about medicine, what you're trying to remember is shapes of organs and cells. When you talk about engineering, you're talking about different shapes of entities and objects, and perhaps drawings and things of that sort. The engineering, it could be more abstract than the medicine, but at the end of the day, both of them are dealing with physical reality. One is machines, and the other is the human body, but at the same time, so in one sense they're different, and in the other sense they're similar. All memory techniques touch upon the importance of using multi-sensory approach when you're studying or when you're trying to create memories. That's why you'd rather memorize, or you're able to memorize something when you use metaphors, when you use pictures, when you do something with your hand, and so forth. So that would help create memory, and of course attention would help create memory. That's why when you like something, you memorize what you're doing in it, because when you like something, you're attentive when you're doing it.
So it depends on your memory, not on the science itself.
Well, the ability depends on you. Part of it, or a great deal of it, depends on you. And on the other hand, what is being memorized is described by two things. One, by the field that you're studying. Two, is by your personal experience and by your abilities as well. There is no separate reasons. All of they're multiple. It's complex, multiple reasons, and they're interconnected, and there's an interplay between those reasons. You understand? So sometimes the ability has more weight. Sometimes the discipline itself has more weight. How do you discover that? By two things. One, by trial and error. The other thing is applying the universal rule or rules of memorization. One of them is attention. The other is multi-sensory approach, using more senses, drawing connections using metaphors and example. Doing practical applications, seeing that thing that you're studying happening in front of you. The more senses you involve in learning, the better you retain the information. That's why they say, when you explain things, you memorize them, for example. Because it became an experience. So you're not memorizing the words, you're memorizing the experience. That day when I sat and explained, instead of saying, I want to memorize that sentence by itself. Okay? This is the first question. The second question was, I can't remember. They're all the same. The last question you asked something about, are there are there sciences that depend on memory more than others? Of course, like language would depend on memory more than others. Poetry, for example, especially the literature, would depend more on memorization rather than thinking. But the human ability, Ibn Sina, for example, if I'm not mistaken, and also Ahmed Isa Mawlawi has stated that. Actually, yes, Ibn Sina and Mawlawi has made a remark on this, and Imam al-Razi in his book Al-Mabahith al-Mashriqiyya, he talked about how we cannot reach perfection in both understanding and memorization. Both of them together is impossible. One would be more than the other. If you concentrate while learning on memorization, the understanding and the ability to rationalize and to process information and to draw connections will be less. The more you think about what's being memorized, then what is being memorized will be less. And the reason behind this is perhaps that the working memory, this is the biological reason, that the working memory is limited. So if you use a lot of energy in memorizing, you will not have an equal amount of energy to do understanding, and vice versa. It's just looking out for the mixture that you want, that matches the discipline that you're learning as well, and your role in that discipline, the reason you're learning it, and where you want to reach in that discipline. But if you take a person who wants to study Arabic and doesn't want to memorize, problem. A person that plays music and doesn't want to memorize music pieces, difficult. But on the other hand, a person that studies engineering doesn't have to memorize a lot, it's just a couple of equations and formulas. Perhaps the memory here is not used to memorize things, but rather retain retain or remember what has been practiced. You understand? But not memory in the term of reciting what has been absorbed or what has been learned. And the biological reason that I have mentioned for the memorization and understanding is very similar to the philosophical reason as well. Because in philosophy also we see that attention, that the brain, or actually I'm sorry, that the mind does not see something, that the mind, cannot judge something, or cannot use something unless it is attentive to it, unless you see it. If you're not attentive to something, you cannot use it, and you cannot judge it, because you don't see it. What is the relationship between that and memory and understanding? Well, if you're directing your mind towards the text that is in front of you, on memorizing it, then you don't see what is being mentioned. You don't see the meanings. But if your mind is targeted towards the meanings, perhaps your ability to see things that help you memorize is less. Perhaps this is one of the philosophical explanations. There are others, but I cannot, retain them now fully, to be honest, especially in English. Perhaps in Arabic it would be different. Yes?
I think I misunderstood the first question. I thought she was asking if are there different parts of the brain that are meant to study or to receive some sort of certain information or certain types of knowledge.
Is that your question? Yeah. Also, the parts of the brain or the mind?
No, remember
the brain that
the design of the memory as Allah created.
Okay.
Some memories are designed to accept specific sciences. It is easier for it. As for me, I learn languages easier than maybe other things. Or for another person, no, language is very hard. He cannot memorize words. He find it difficult. The physics, chemistry, or so on.
Okay.
This is what was my first question, and I think you have answered it.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And I also have that question. Is it designed this way, or it is like when you start in the process of learning something, there is a certain space that is developed inside your brain that no other notions that get into the brain or things overlap you? Like when you start learning about something, there is a space in your brain or in your mind that is actually that gets empty for this.
Or occupied by this.
Or occupied, yeah.
Like Suhrawardi also talks about how, and others, they say how when you learn something, he says, إدراك الشيء انطباع صورته في العقل, or something of that sort. That when you learn something, or you perceive something, there is a mental image of it that becomes created in the mind. So the more things you perceive, or the things that you perceive determine, or the quality of your perceptions determine the quality and the things that are stored in your mind, not only the brain. And actually the brain as well. So, and again, in some sense I answer your question, because the brain is affected by what is called brain plasticity. The brain is affected by what we study. Yes, the brain. So the brain is affected by what we study and what we learn and what we perceive. Different neural connections or would emerge out of learning experiences. Different networks are created between the neurons. You want to come up? Okay. You like it up here, right?
She likes the mic.
Yes. Power has its own temptations. Okay. You want to be a teacher? Yes, teacher. I know both of them are doctors, but you can be a teacher. I did that with my parents as well. Both of them are doctors. I'm like, no, I'll be a teacher. Okay. I'm sorry. You like it? You like the idea, teacher, yes? Okay. So the brain creates different connections, different networks between the neurons. Again, the notion of the brain and the notion of the mind, they're both complex entities. Meaning what? Meaning that they have different... See, even the scholars... Okay, this one is good, you can take this one. The scholars that talk about... how different, how specific parts in the brain are responsible for specific functions, they still talk about how when one part is functioning, the others have to adjust other parts in the brain. So, for example, when they do fMRI tests during, memory experiments, they would find certain parts in the brain are lighting. But at the same time, yes, this is true. At the same time, that doesn't mean that at the same time other parts of the brain are not functioning, are not involved in this function directly, but yet these parts of the brain are actually adjusting. I remember this. These parts of the brain are adjusting their functioning in a way that facilitates to the part that is involved in the current function. Do you understand? So if you are now using a part related to the memory, for example, so now the memory, no, we don't play with pens.
No.
Yeah, okay. The part that is being used in memory is being activated or is being involved in the memorization. But at the same time, other parts of the brain that are not directly involved in memorization or involved in memory, they adjust themselves to accommodate the needs of that part of the brain. So there is always an interplay back and forth in the different parts. So those who focus on this part of the brain is responsible for the memory, they keep talking about how this part is related to this. Others would start saying, we have realized that other parts were adjusting themselves to accommodate this function. And in learning how to learn that is provided on Coursera, you would find how Professor Barbara Oakley was talking about there are two modes of the brain. One mode is the diffuse mode, or the default mode. And that default mode is when you are resting. And how when we are resting, that facilitates the different connections between things. Alright? And then you find Professor Terence Sinwaski, this is the mainstream. Okay? You find Professor Terence Sinwaski, who's co-instructing that course, is mentioning a little bit subtly different in a subtle way, presenting a different opinion from what Professor Barbara Oakley has mentioned. So again, in this part, when you talked about the default network or the default mode network, he was saying about how the default network would help the person focus. And yet she was talking about how it helps the person rests, or how it helps in resting, or while resting, and he says how it helps while focusing and being attentive.
I guess both are connected.
One of them is talking about an area of the brain that is functioning in a certain way, and the other is talking about adjustments. So perhaps she is talking, perhaps, right now we're casually discussing this because I'm giving it as an example. She is discussing about how the default network is acting and behaving while resting. Okay? And it has a certain way of behavior that facilitates while resting memory connections and chunking of memory and so forth. On the other hand, Professor Terence Sinwaski is talking about what? Talking about that default network, when the person is attentive, is also adjusting itself to accommodate the attention. So the default network has a kind of adjustment while resting and another kind of adjustment while being attentive. Perhaps one of them is direct to resting and is affecting the resting directly or being affected by the resting directly, and the other is being affected by the attention indirectly. I don't know if that's clear enough or not. It's kind of, this is a little bit difficult. But basically, if we want to sum this up, certain actions that we do require certain functions from the brain. So and during those functions, parts of the brain are more involved than the others. And not because they are more involved, that would mean that the others are not involved. They are involved, but indirectly. They are adjusting themselves to accommodate the involvement of other parts. You understand? And vice versa. So there is always an interplay and interchanging roles between those parts. That's why it's very difficult sometimes to assign a certain part of the brain to a certain function. Meaning that it is the only part of the brain responsible. Because even if it is involved, but the other parts are not adjusting themselves to accommodate that part's involvement, the function would not be, the operation would not occur. You understand? That was difficult to explain. Okay, question? Okay.
First, regarding the computer and the RAM.
Okay.
Okay. So if we are giving.
I don't repair computers. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
Okay.
Regarding that example, yes.
Yeah. If you are like giving so many tasks to the computer at one time.
Okay.
So it will just like
Crash, freeze.
whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the human body or the human memory, so if we are giving so many tasks at the same time, like if I'm like watching the TV and studying and it doesn't work.
If you're
right?
studying something for the very, very, very first time, you're not building on previous information. You're studying something, like this is the very first time you hear about something. You cannot do both at the same time.
Okay. But it doesn't mean like we cannot learn a lot of things.
Now, there is a difference between multitasking and managing multiple tasks. Like shifting back and forth between science and math. That's called interleaving. That's actually good. There's a difference between doing an hour of math and an hour of science, then an hour of language, and then coming back to math. This is one thing. Or opening the 4 books together and reading them simultaneously. That doesn't work, really. You understand? Or watching television and at the same time opening a book, trying to understand something for the very first time. Okay.
Okay, so like sometimes if I'm searching or doing a task on something, so I may read something about this from a specific page on the internet, and then I go to another book and I read a lot of, like, I just read from a lot of things in order to make up the task. So is it okay or?
That's called research.
Yeah.
So obviously you have to move from one source to another. Unless you're learning via research, that's another story. You get what I mean? Yeah, I mean, but what she's asking, if that helps in grasping, understand? So sometimes I would recommend this, and other times I would not, because sometimes if you do this only, you're training yourself not to spend too much time with only one field or one topic or one concept. And in learning, sometimes you have to stay with one idea or one subject for some time. So if you always use that way, you usually get bored afterwards when you want to learn something that requires from you a long time. So try to juggle between different tools. Unless you can turn that thing into a research. But then, again, you'll find yourself going from one idea to another.
There are 3 questions.
Okay.
For the you read Quran, even if you're not understanding, this is affecting your soul. This is because we believe in that. As we believe in, if we read Quran, maybe we feel better. But this is also for anything that you're going to read, as even if you have read something that you do not understand,
No,
it can affect
that
your
would,
soul.
that would not.
Just because of our subconscious about Quran is going to make us feel good.
It's not about our subconscious of the Quran, it's about the Quran. Because the Quran is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed it, and as scholars say, مُتَعَبَّدٌ بِتِلَاوَتِهِ, that the recitation of the Quran in itself is an act of worship, is a meditation.
So it has.
But if you just one second, if you treat other books to read them but not to understand them, actually this is not good. You know, actually they said, Ahmed Isa al-Mawlawi has talked about how when we develop the habit of reading without understanding, that inherits yurith al-balagha. He said that explicitly. That you have, if you develop the habit of reading without understanding. But Quran is different. It's different because of how it is, and it's different because of our belief in it, about how it is, and also it's different because of personal experience.
Okay, second one.
Okay.
How to train my memory to be better?
How to train your memory?
Okay, maybe this is a long question.
Yeah.
Okay, the last one.
Okay.
You mentioned something about the arts of progress of our medicine, and it's not because what the Prophet has said, but it's the place of the Prophet.
Okay.
Okay, if this is true, so where did this place go?
What do you mean? Where did this blessing?
Yeah, this blessing go. And if we look to the fairs and maybe to the West, some people in the West even does not believe in God, not the Prophet. And the era of pharaohs, even they also does not believe in God, and they have really achieved the real progress, especially in medicine.
Yeah. This does not contradict what I'm saying. What I'm saying is,
it
if
doesn't depend about the idea of barakah or blessing. It depends on the person has the knowledge and the seek of searching. So
Exactly.
Allah, let this happen. Whatever he's Muslim, he's not. He believes in God, he does not.
I didn't say anything different. This is the exact message that I wanted to say. I didn't want to say anything different than what you just said.
I would just let
The blessings is something different than advancing in science. And what I intended to differentiate between seeking a spiritual blessing on one hand and seeking an advancement in science. Actually, I'm one of the people that differentiate between Islam as a religion and Islam as a science. Orientalists, they study fiqh. Orientalists, they study hadith. Orientalists, they study Islamic philosophy.
Yeah.
Science is science. Science is not a religious phenomenon. But on the other hand, it can't. I mean, it's not a religious phenomenon in the sense it's a human phenomenon, meaning it transcends human differences, thoughts, madahib, whatever. Okay, so it's transcendent. You find atheists who are scientists. It's not limited or confined to a specific group or a specific sect. And also science. See. Actually, advancement in this world primarily is defined by how much effort and time and reasons you have for development. If you don't have the right combo for being, a developed country, you would not develop regardless of what. If you're a nation or a group or a person who is unjust and you're a Muslim, you would not flourish. And if a person who's not a Muslim, but he's a just person, is a hard worker, is a person that uses all the reasons and abilities and sources and resources and manages his time and puts the time and effort and puts his mind to something, he will achieve regardless of his religion. I understand that completely. And one of the main reasons why the so-called political Islamists have failed, because they misunderstood this part. You would not flourish just because you're saying Islam is the only solution. That's an absolute bogus idea. Because Islam, what do you mean by Islam? What do you mean? Your understanding of Islam might be different than my understanding of Islam. So we start saying, oh, it's my understanding, it's the only solution. And then we get into this whole different kind of ideological warfare about whose understanding is better than the other. Yet, nations flourish by good economic policies, by improving health conditions, by providing education for the needy. This is how nations improve. As a natural as a natural reality, as a part of the nature. Ibn Khaldun, and before him Aristotle, in the book of Politics, Aristotle talks about how the human societies are a natural phenomenon. And Ibn Khaldun's book, he took that notion from Aristotle, and when he developed the Muqaddimah, the whole 3 books, he's talking about how that human societies, al-ijtima' al-bashari, amrun tabi'i, is a natural phenomenon. When we say natural phenomena, meaning it is subject to causes and effects of the natural world, not the metaphysical, the spiritual. That's another realm. Which part of the human existence? And perhaps now Western nations are seeking meditation and yoga and Osho and Watts and those people who are seeking things from Hinduism, Buddhism, and the Dalai Lama talks about happiness and compassion. They realized that they developed societies of consumption, of materialistic wealth, and that there is a different dimension of the human psyche that they have not, we're not paying attention to. But yet, this is one aspect, which is the spiritual existence of human beings. Other aspects, if you have the reasons, the resources, and you have the causes of advancements in the physical world, then you will get advanced. That's how it is.